Today we are exploring the topic of unintentional tamariki poisonings that occur in the home. Poisonings are the fourth leading cause of unintentional injuries in the home, which is serious enough to require hospitalisation. Safe Kids Aotearoa is the injury prevention service of Starship Children's Health, dedicated to reducing unintentional, preventable injuries to tamariki aged 0 to 14 years old in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Here with us today from the Safe Kids team, we have Moses, Laura, and myself. We have 3 more home safety webinars coming up soon, and we really welcome you to check out our social media platforms to stay connected. As well as webinar details, you'll also find great tamariki safety info on our Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and on the Safe Kids website. So today we're going to be focusing in particular on under 5s, as they are at the biggest risk for unintentional preventable injuries resulting from poisonings. We're going to look at some New Zealand specific data on poison-related injuries and explore how different developmental stages play into age-specific risks and prevention strategies. Overall, hopefully we'll add to your kete of tamariki home safety knowledge with our key safety messages and tips. Okay, so we're going to look now at some New Zealand specific data focusing on home-based injuries which have resulted from poisonings. All right, so here we're talking about preventable unintentional injuries, hospitalizations and deaths that we know can be reduced if we are more aware of the risks and prevention strategies around keeping our tamariki safe. Now, the term preventable unintentional injuries is a bit of a mouthful, but it really does highlight the fact that what we might often call accidents are often preventable, even if they are unintentional. Okay, so here in this section, the top 2 sections of this pyramid up here represent the areas of injury prevention that Safe Kids Aotearoa focuses on. So these are serious injuries which result in hospitalizations or fatalities. Many international studies propose that community incidents, as represented in the bottom 3 tiers of this pyramid here, is much higher than hospital admissions, suggesting that due to a large proportion of unrecorded injuries, injury statistics likely only reflect a proportion of actual incidence rates. Now, looking back up at the 2 tiers here that Safe Kids Aotearoa focuses on, I want to highlight the fact that when we're talking about injury prevention and keeping our tamariki safe today, we're using the definition of an injury that results in at least 24 hours in hospital. So we're really not talking about wrapping our young ones up in cotton wool, but rather about keeping our little ones safe from injuries that may have a lasting impact on that child and their whānau. Okay, so when we're talking about the home environment here today, we're talking about the property line. So that would be home injuries that might happen in the garden or driveway, as well as indoors. So unintentional injuries are up there as the 3rd leading cause of tamariki deaths in Aotearoa, with the number 1 leading cause being medical conditions and the 2nd leading cause being sudden unexplained death in infancy, also known as SUDI. Research suggests that there is a socio-economic gradient to unintentional tamariki injuries, meaning that with more poverty and financial hardship comes more risk. We also see that Māori and Pacific populations are more at risk for tamariki unintentional injuries. This disparity can be traced back to historical and current structural and systemic inequities that have resulted in Māori and Pacific populations having a greater risk for lower family incomes and worse housing conditions, and lower levels of culturally appropriate health education for caregivers and whānau. We can help to combat these inequities by recognising disparities and channeling more support and resources to those populations who are at a higher risk. Okay, so what we're looking at here is a representation of where injuries are being sustained by tamariki. So what I'd like to highlight from this video is that at different ages, the developmental characteristics are very different. And as such, prevention strategies should fit the developmental stage that a child is at. Children are uniquely vulnerable in their potential to experience unintentional poisoning due to their changing developmental skills and their body's inability to withstand the effects of toxins. So, exploring things with their mouths are one of the key ways that babies and toddlers gain information about their environment. Children are naturally inquisitive, and learning by exploring their environment is an integral and important part of a child's growth and development. Toddlers are generally becoming much more mobile and adept at exploring their environment, and the data clearly shows that toddlers aged 1 and 2 years old are at the greatest risk for poisoning in the home environment. As such, active adult supervision in a child-safe environment is very important at this age. As children get older, the data suggests that they become less likely to experience a serious poisoning that may lead to a hospitalization or death. However, children in this age range are still often not yet able to fully understand the difference between what is safe and what is dangerous, and love to explore closed cupboards, rooms, and storage spaces. Young kids aren't necessarily put off by a bitter or sour taste, especially if medicine or poisonous substances appear enticing or special. For older children, there is the risk of misidentification of poisons or chemicals. For example, if a substance is kept in a different container than the original. Some common examples I've heard from my own community where harmful substances might be kept in food or drink containers include keeping petrol in an old Coke bottle or PVA glue in a yogurt container. It is okay to mix like paint or glue in a yogurt container or other food container while you are using it. However, as we're going to see in the next slide, it's actually illegal to store it in one with or without the label on. There have been a number of instances in New Zealand where poisonings have occurred because a harmful substance was stored in a container different than the original. So in New Zealand, it's actually illegal for anyone to store chemicals in food or beverage containers. A New Zealand study revealed that these exposures are continuing to occur despite laws prohibiting the storage of chemicals in food and beverage containers. The storage of hazardous chemicals in drink bottles can potentially cause severe poisoning and can even result in death. We actually have an activity that we do during the Safe Kids home safety workshops where health professionals are asked to guess which unlabeled substances are chemicals, medicine, or food. Most of the time, even adults find it very hard to guess correctly. Children also find it very hard to differentiate between safe and unsafe substances and can poison themselves through innocent exploration of their environment with little concept of the potential danger to themselves. Consequently, children are reliant on adults to ensure their safety and well-being. So here we can see that within the home, there are specific places which have been identified where poisonings are most likely to occur. The different colours in the columns represent the ages of children. As we've already seen today, those aged 0 to 4 years old, represented in the dark blue colour, are far more at risk for a poisoning which results in hospitalisation than older tamariki. And just a note here, the column on the far left named Other and Unspecified Place in a Home, that covers poisonings where the place they occurred didn't quite fit into a set category like kitchen or lounge, or it was unknown, which would suggest that in many of these cases, tamariki were not under active supervision by an adult. So what we're seeing here in the grey section is that between 2011 and 2015, there were nearly 200 home injuries that resulted in a child fatality. 90% of those deaths caused by unintentional injuries sustained in the home, with children and babies aged 4 years and under. In the orange here, we can see that 5 of those 188 deaths were directly related to poisoning, and that 3 of these 5 poison-related deaths were little ones under 4 years old. So thinking back to how developmental stages play into injury risk, we can see maybe why babies and toddlers might be at the highest risk for injuries. They're learning to roll over, crawl, walk, and run, but they're still developing those comprehension and future thinking skills. So we can see here again that poisonings in the home, which results in hospitalizations, affect younger children disproportionately. The pink lines represent tamariki aged 1 and 2 years old. Most poisonings happen at home and involve everyday items such as cleaning products, medications, cosmetics, button batteries, glue, alcohol, and even plants. The good news is that there has been a steady decline in hospitalizations from unintentional poisoning in children over the last decade. Prevention does work, and there are a number of things you can do to prevent an accidental poisoning in your household or community. So there are many different ways that a little one can be exposed to potential injury from poisons. One of the most common ways that tamariki end up finding adult medication is when it's in a handbag, and can be easily accessed if an adult isn't looking. Even adults can find it very hard to distinguish, as I mentioned before, what is and isn't medicine just by looking. And many forms of those medicines for children nowadays are made to seem really enticing with flavors, sweeteners, and pretty colors. I know that I myself used to sneak homeopathic arnica pills from the pantry as a kid because they tasted sweet, and luckily they weren't a highly toxic substance because I would definitely guzzle down quite a few. Now, because tamariki learn by copying, it's really important to keep medicines and poisonous substances out of their reach so they aren't able to access substances which may be safe for adults but poisonous for little ones. And just here, with the chemicals being kept in the wrong container, there have been recent instances in New Zealand where tamariki have been seriously poisoned due to ingesting harmful liquids being kept in drink bottles, highlighting the importance of keeping poisonous substances in their original containers. So another way that tamariki may be poisoned is by therapeutic error. This is a term used to classify dispensing or administration errors that can lead to the unintentional poisoning of a child. Now that all sounds pretty technical, but basically what it means is for example, an administration error, which would be due to oversupply. An example would be if one parent were to administer medicine to a child without knowing that the other parent had also just administered a dose of the same medicine. So to avoid this happening, it's really important to be mindful and communicate with other adults or caregivers about when and how much medicine was given to the child. An example of a dispensing error due to distractions or interruptions would be if, for example, a caregiver was looking after multiple children and unintentionally gave a younger child the dosage they would usually give for an older child. One way to avoid this happening is to double check that the dosages you are following are correct for the age and weight of the child you're giving medicine to. So the number one most likely way for a child to be poisoned is by ingesting or swallowing a harmful substance. Other common ways that poison-related serious injuries occur are via skin contact, such as exposure to granola or bleach, via eye contact. I remember as a kid a glow stick breaking and the substance getting into another kid's eye, and via inhalation, for example, inhaling fumes or gas. So paracetamol and ibuprofen, which are medications that reduce pain and fever, are the top two most common substances reported to the New Zealand National Poison Centre as potential poisonings. So then at number 3, we have those little packets full of tiny balls of silica gel that are probably about this small, and they're used to keep things like fresh and dry. They're often found in new items like shoes and handbags, vitamin containers, and can also be found in packets of food. So yeah, really common. At number 4 and 5, we have toilet bowl discs and dishwashing liquid, which are common household products that might not be thought to keep out of reach of children. Whilst always having to put these often used items up higher in a child-safe container may feel a little bit annoying in the moment, it's really important to be mindful of the potential consequences if we don't take the time to keep these harmful substances away from our tamariki. So here are some key statistics about tamariki poisonings in Aotearoa. Now, of these tamariki aged 0 to 4 years old, those aged 1 and 2 years are at an even higher risk for poisoning. Medicine is the leading cause of serious poisonings to tamariki. Other leading causes of poisoning are chemicals at 18% and drugs and narcotics at 12%. The home environment here includes the child's own home and may also include others' homes, such as grandparents, relatives, or friends. So we've come up with an acronym to help us remember some key ways to keep tamariki safe from unintentional poisoning in the home. So the first one here is store. So keep all potentially harmful substances out of reach of tamariki. The next one is ask. Whenever possible, ask for safety caps on medicines or chemicals. Although do be mindful that when children reach a certain age, they sort of figure out how to open those caps themselves. So I guess that's just about keeping an eye on where they're at their kind of developmental stages. The next one here is follow. So keep a log to ensure that correct dosage when giving medicine to tamariki. So making sure that we're giving them the right amount of medicine for their age and weight. And then the last one here is to ensure to take the time to read and follow safety recommendations. So whether that be medicine, chemicals, or cleaners, really important that we sort of have a bit of a sense of how to keep our little ones safe. So if your child has swallowed something and you're not sure if it may have had a poisonous effect, you can phone the National Poison Centre on 0800 Poison. The National Poison Centre is New Zealand's only poison and hazardous chemicals information centre and runs a 24-hour, 7-day toll-free emergency telephone service. You don't need any credit on your phone to call an 0800 number. Please do seek medical attention if a child is showing signs of being unwell and you suspect that poisoning may have occurred. And if a child is unconscious or has stopped breathing, then of course you'd call 111 and start CPR immediately. So people working in injury prevention have also suggested the following tips that they might help your child avoid injury. So take a good look around your home for any unwanted or expired medications or chemicals and dispose of them safely. It can be really tempting to refer to medicines and vitamins as lollies. However, this can be really confusing and potentially dangerous to a young child who may seek them out as you're not looking, as I did as a kid. If you become distracted when using a cleaning product, take it with you while you deal with that issue. I think that's a really good tip. And keep a log when administering medicine to reduce the risk of accidental overdose. So for more detailed information about child unintentional poisonings, please refer to our position paper, which is available on the Safe Kids Aotearoa website for download. I guess overall, injury prevention strategies are often pretty common sense and easy to put in place, especially if we have a little creativity. So yeah, it's just about having that extra bit of awareness and knowing that a little bit of time spent on creating a safe environment for our tamariki may be the difference between a serious injury or a happy, healthy child.
Vinaka, thank you so much, Shyla, for that presentation and also sharing your personal stories. I'm sure a lot of us can relate. So what we'll do now is we'll go into the questions part of our session. I'd like to invite Moses Alatini, who is our unintentional injury expert. Malo Moses.
Malo, Vinaka.
Okay, so we'll just go straight right into it. Our first question is, I have a lot of cleaning products under my kitchen sink. How can I secure these if I don't have anywhere to put them up high?
I guess for me, what comes to mind is there was some great videos just actually on the Safe Kids Facebook page, and I guess other forms of social media that I don't follow, created by Nat, actually, who's here with us today. So that's sort of thinking about ways that we can keep our little ones from getting into cupboards or whatever. So, you can buy those special sort of, I'm not sure exactly what they're called, Moses, I'm sure we'll have the technical name for them, but those, they kind of like click onto the cupboard handles and make it so little ones can't open them. But another really great idea that Nat came up with in the video on the Facebook page is tying a tea towel around it, a cupboard, just to keep that closed. And yeah, just thinking of those sort of creative ways of keeping our little ones out of that mischief. Moses, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I totally agree. Storage, secure storage is the most important. Keeping it out of reach and away from children. And if you can't put it away, there are many ways to secure cupboards through cupboard latches, but also improvising, whether it's a tea towel, whether it's piece of rope, just to secure the latches from opening up.
Thank you. The next question might be more towards you, Mo. Why do the medicine bottles or containers from pharmacies not have kiddie locks on them?
So legally they don't have to, but there are a list of medication and medicines that require child-resistant closures. You can find that list on the Ministry of Health and the National Poison Centre websites. But as Shyla mentioned in the presentation, there's no harm in asking your local pharmacist to ensure that your medication is in a child-resistant closure. But do bear in mind there might be a small cost.
Thank you for that. Next question is, with heightened awareness of hygiene and consumption of hand sanitizer, do I need to store it up high from my children aged 3 years old and under?
Short answer is yes. There's few programs and studies in place in Australia where they're looking at the impact of kids ingesting hand sanitizer solution. So yes, if once you've used it and you've got young ones in the family, store it away.
Awesome, thank you. Next one is there a way to start talking to kids about poisons?
So yeah, wow, that's a great question. I think that when we run the home safety workshops and we do have a lot more sort of participant interaction and get to hear from members of our community and health professionals, having those conversations with tamariki is one of the kind of key things that comes up when they do get a little bit older and they're able to learn a little bit more about potential consequences. I think it's a great way of kind of it's quite an empowering way of allowing children to learn a bit more about I guess it's science as well, but about how their behavior might impact their health or others' health. And then as they get older, then they can kind of help to tell their younger siblings or friends about potential health risks. So yeah, I'd say it's an awesome idea to start having those conversations. I think the question was how to start having those conversations, and I guess that would be sort of up to each individual parent or caregiver to know how best to chat with their kids about it. But yeah, I don't know if there are any kind of resources that are specifically around that, Moses.
Yeah, totally agree. Thanks, Shal. There's no age where you shouldn't or you should try and talk to kids, but you need to bear in mind that the younger kids, especially those under 5, will still require more than just the education. So it's about supervision. It's about putting measures in place, such as storing the chemicals and medicines in high and secure places to ensure they don't get into it. The reality is we can't supervise our kids 24 hours, especially the young ones. So
awesome. So our final question is thoughts around implementing safety catches and locks to prevent a 2 to 4 year old, but the 5 to 7 year olds rip them off.
Well, parents are going to know what's best for their kids. Like I said, it's similar to the question we just had about educating kids. You can talk to your 5 to 7 year old about what they shouldn't and shouldn't do. But I guess with the younger ones, it's going to require more than just education. It's going to require supervision. It's also require other ways to secure some of these chemicals and medication.
Awesome, thank you. So if anyone else has any final questions, please feel free to send them through to our Safe Kids Aotearoa website or any of our social medias, Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. Do any of you have any final thoughts before I close us off?
I'll just say that we have those mentioned at the start, but we have 3 more tamariki home safety webinars coming up, and we'd really love for you to join us for more sort of tips on how to keep our little ones safe in the home. So we've got one on burns, one on choking and strangulation, and one on driveway runovers. So yeah, really important topics.